You are seeing now? Okay. Okay. Is it all good? Okay. Um, Hello everyone. My name is Srinivas Mari, as many of you know, and today I'm going to bring up the presentation on the Scrum and DevOps Essential. So it's a kind of challenge for me to present this in a 1 hour because these two are very huge topics, and the main thing why I brought these two together is the Scrum is a kind of agile methodology, and they provided a framework here, and it talks about starting from portfolio or starting from strategy analysis of a company or an enterprise, and from there onwards, how can you do a shippable products from software perspective. From that perspective, it provides a framework for you. And why DevOps comes in is so DevOps is part of Scrum framework, and it got integrated within it. So where there is a development and operations are going in it, and security is integrated within that, and that will takes to a shippable product to the customers. So it would be good to see a Scrum starting from beginning onwards, from strategic decisions onwards, to see the development operations delivering the really workable products to the customers as a continuous basis. So that's why we call DevOps as a CI/CD process, where the continuous integration and continuous delivery or continuous deployments. So that's the idea behind. Would like to give you all the real-time experiences that I've gained so far in my work experience until now, and I'm fortunate enough to work with a lot of highly ethical and professional Scrum Masters and DevOps architects. So I gathered all of that experiences into this session. So let's dive into that. So, as I said, I'm Srinivas Mumari, and as information systems and cloud security architect. So, since though I didn't play these roles of Scrum Master and DevOps, but I work pretty closely with the very good professional Scrum Masters and DevOps architects, and that's where I bought all of these things. And today's agenda is from the Scrum. I would like to bring in all the concepts, roles, and what different roles and what are the planning process involved at portfolio level and at sprint level and release process level and all. And what is the sprinting process we follow on a regular basis for all the features that we've been developing. So that's the scope which will be giving the whole idea of what the Scrum framework is and what exactly the things a Scrum Master will do, what exactly a product owner will do, what the development teams will do, what the project manager or the program manager will do. So all of these things are clubbed together as part of the Scrum process here. And from DevOps perspective, I would be getting you the DevOps portfolio, things like how the program of developer operations and CI/CD process will come. I'll show you a small demo on that. And when it comes to the DevSecOps, how the security practices can be integrated within the pipelines of CI/CD, and how these pipelines will become as a practice in DevOps pipelines. And there is a whole bunch of tools that can be used for this. So I'll be providing that, and I'll be giving you a kickstart where you can start in your own. A DevSecOps or DevOps pipelines can be built and release your software products to your customers. So that's the objective of this one. So what I would request all the audience is keep typing all your questions as and when I go with this whole agenda of things. So at the end, I'll take all of your questions to answer whatever the time it takes. Even if it goes beyond an hour, I'll be available for the people who are eager to learn the things. So that keep post all your questions in the message box so that I will answer each and every one of it. So starting with Scrum Essentials. So the Scrum Essentials, basically we need to understand what is a Scrum, what is an Agile and all that stuff. So let's dive into that. So now the question is, most of the newbies or the new people, they are very new to the Agile process. They are still sometimes in waterfall, maybe in federal or state government agencies, they follow that. They are still not yet in Scrum methodology. So for them, the Scrum is an agile approach for developing innovative products and services proactively. So when it comes to developing the products and services, how it could be innovative when it comes to waterfall or any other rapid incremental model or an iterative model, so we have in agile. So all of that would be covered in this framework. So and we all talk about agile buzzword, and the meaning of the agile is got to move quickly and easily. So it should not be complicated. So it should be easy and in a smooth sail with a process oriented framework. So as shown in this particular flow diagram, you are seeing like it starts with a product backlog. So when it is going to start is there will be a funnel of good ideas. So all those ideas will be bring in and put it into a product backlog, and that product backlog is a collection of features, and it's keep on growing up in that, and there will be a product owner who will be prioritizing what comes first and what comes next, so that it can be planned further. So once there's a product backlog is being piling up, and there will be a product owner who will be prioritizing all of these things, so in order to see the business value, and they will take highly prioritized item for a grooming process. So grooming is an activity where they take a raw native business requirement and convert that into an implementation model for the technology stack that an organization has. I mean to say, an organization can have all the .NET professionals or all Java Z professionals or mainframe professionals or CRM. Yep. I made it as full screen. How about now? And is it better? So let me see how I can make it slide master. Is it better? Is it better now? Okay. Okay. Is it now? Okay, and where is the slideshow? I see the slideshow at the bottom, and okay, here play from the start, present a view. How is it now? Okay. 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 I think this view is better, right? Okay. So yeah. Sorry for that. And so here, so when the Scrum framework is getting started, when the funnel of big ideas goes into your product backlog, and then the people start to grooming. Grooming means a raw native business requirement is being taken and then elaborated from technical implementation point of view. What technology it should go in, how the look and feel looks like, how the data is going to come in, what kind of data it acts into that particular requirement. All that gets groomed here. And from grooming onwards, it goes to the sprint planning. So the sprint planning basically, it needs to be broken down into stories. So a story is a sizable task where it would be estimated as a story points, and the story points will be in a Fibonacci sequence where it starts from 0, 1, 1 again, and 1 plus 1, 2, 2 plus 1, 3, and 2 plus 3, 5, 8, it continues. So a sprint can size from a week to 4 weeks. So in a month, it won't go beyond that. So most of the time, a lot of companies go with 2 weeks of sprint, and so that way the business customers can quickly see in what is the requirement, how it looks like from data perspective and look and feel perspective. And so the sprint backlog, where all the stories get splitted up, and then it is ready for the team to take the sprints. So it depends upon the release what we have. It can split it up into a particular feature or a particular epic. It can split it into how many releases, and each release can go in how many sprints and how many teams are required. These are all the process it goes there as part of the planning of the grooming and sprint planning. Once the stories got splitted out, the teams has a capabilities and strengths of its own. So whatever the strengths the team has, they go and pick it up on agile mode. I mean to say proactive mode. Nobody will come and say that, hey, you need to do this and you need to do this. It's not that way it will work. The way it will work is go and take your own task where you are great at it, and then say that I'm going to do this. That's the proactive nature an agile person should cultivate. And from there, the sprints will start executing. Say, for example, if it's a 2 weeks of sprint, and there will be a 24 for every 24 hours there should be a daily scrum. So in the daily scrum, you got to say, what did I accomplish since my last daily scrum? It means last 24 hours, what did I do till now? And what I'm going to do until next daily scrum. And what are the obstacles or impediments that's preventing me from doing my work, my progress, and making the progress. So all these things, daily scrum, everybody has to tell. And the daily scrums goes for 15 minutes, not more than that. And it's a scrum master responsibility to see the discussions are not dragging more to occupy everybody's time. So that way he has to say, hey guys, it has to go in, let's take it offline. So that's what the scrum master has to take it and make a note of what is the discussion item and who are the participants required for that, and then set up a meeting for them. So a scrum master should be proactive in this process on daily scrums. And this particular activity for a scrum master should be same even in sprint planning and grooming also, because when more people are involved, each of them has their own opinions, and it goes into the discussion, and the 1 hour time slot may drag and go into beyond the timelines. So scrum master has to isolate all of those discussion and set up a meeting with required participants, and then address it in right way. So that's one activity he has to do continuously throughout the framework. And once the sprint execution is being done for those 2 weeks, and there is a potentially shippable product will be coming out, and once a particular story, say for example, a sprint has 5 stories, and 5 stories is being taken by a couple of developers or testers. All that. Once my story is being completed, I first say I meet my tester and see that, hey, this particular thing comes as per the requirement or not, and my tester approves it. Yes, this is fine at a high level, and all my test cases has been going to execute. So these are all good. So now I take my my task or my story to a product owner. So the product owner will see at a high level it is being it's been met or not, and finally the tester is going to give a demo to the product owner after all of his or her test cases has been completed successfully for that story. So the tester will get product owner approval and mark it as right to mark it as a done. So it's the definition of done there. It should be there should be a code coverage of 100%, if not 80%, not less than that, unit test cases wise. And then all the test cases that has been developed by a tester, maybe automated test cases or manual test cases, they have to execute all of them and make sure everything works fine, and then give a demo to product owner, and then finally all the stories has to go in the same process. And once all of those stories are being reviewed by the product owner, and the whole sprint will go for a sprint review. And the sprint review, there will be most of the teams, external stakeholders or internal stakeholder, or the sprint teams or other scrum teams also could join, and they all give together as a sprint review to all the business stakeholders involved in it, and they all goes with, so this is what we expected, and they appreciate the team. And if there is anything is missing, they would say like, hey, this is an improvement you can take from here. Hey, this is not expected as what we discussed, and that is going to be an immediate action item for the next sprint, and that goes into the sprint backlog for that particular feature, and that would be taken in the next sprint immediately based on priority basis, and then that would get executed again. And once this review process has been over for all the sprints of that particular sprint, then there will be a retrospective. It means the review is being done and you have a shippable product available for delivery. And once it is being completed, all the teams will meet together for a retrospective. What we do in this retrospective is we see like what is being done good and what is being not went well, and what are the things we need to improve. So these are the things in sprint retrospective we discuss as a team and take action items, and Scrum Master should take all the action items. It's not just like we just meet casually since our work is over and just celebrate the success and move on. Not that. So the retrospective is a very valuable thing where you should see that, hey, this is not being done well, the sizing is being done more effectively, I have given more points or I have given less points, so things like that. And this should not be done next time. When the next retrospective comes, the action items need to be first addressed and then go for next action items, and that cycle continues across the features in the product backlog. So that's the whole Scrum framework goes here. And at a high level, we have roles, activities, and artifacts. And in Scrum process, we have mainly three actors. One is a product owner, Scrum Master, and development team. And development team could have a technical lead, developers, and testers. So, and the activities that goes in a Scrum practice is the sprinting process will be there, daily Scrum, sprint execution, and sprint review, and sprint retrospective, and backlog grooming. And this is a cycle of activities goes in any Scrum process. And finally, what are the deliverables that you get it out of these activities is a product backlog thing. It could be in a tool like a Jira or any Atlassian product or any Agile framework product. So where we have the product backlogs built up in that tool, and there is a sprint backlog, and Jira tools like Jira can capture these backlog stories and potentially shippable product increment. So that is being a deliverable as a software component. So this is at a high level the framework. And now when you see the user story abstraction hierarchy, and when we are talking about tasks are clubbed together as a story, and stories are clubbed together as a feature, and features are clubbed together as a epic. So a bigger than a release, we call it as an epic, and bigger than a sprint, we call it as a feature, and bigger than a task is called as a story. A sprint is ready with set of stories. So just to give an idea, and how much time each of it, a task should not go more than hours, less than hours means like 8 hours or 16 hours, things like that. And a story could take days. So usually the Fibonacci sequence, when you go in a 2 weeks of sprint, then that would be not more than 8 points should be taken by one person. So 8 points or 5 points, you mean to say a 5 days to 8 days, things like that. So the stories should not go in more days. So if in a 2 week sprint, it's not good to take 13 point story, things like that. So features should go in weeks, whereas an epic or a release should go in a month. So keeping that abstraction hierarchy in mind, you can plan your releases or you can plan your shippable products. And grooming, when we are doing a product backlog grooming, then it's a collaborative effort with people like product owner should be there, because product owner is the one who is bringing all your requirements in a raw nature and bring it to the team and explain what is the business needs of it. And the Scrum Master needs to facilitate that, and the development team are the main ones. So if needed, they can come, and internal or external stakeholders can join in grooming part. But mainly the product owner, Scrum Master, and development team should be there. And the question comes, what can go into a product backlog? So a product backlog is a set of features, and each of it will be a product backlog item, and that item could be a feature or a defect or a technical work or a knowledge acquisition when a particular person moves out of it, moves out of the company, and it can be taken as a knowledge transfer, or it could be a good idea of a business value. So all of those things can get into your product backlog. And there is a terminology of the size, velocity, and duration. So when you are doing a backlog grooming, or a product backlog grooming, you can say this feature can go into 5 points, and this feature can go into 3 points, or even it can go into 20 points also. So that high level estimate will be given here, and out of your team's capacity and team's knowledge, skills, and the technical caliber, you can define a team of this many number of people can take up to 20 points. So when my product backlog sizing me for 200 points, and each team of a defined set of people of these skills can take 20 points per sprint. So you can take the sum of all points in product backlog, sum it with the total points divided by the points per sprint, and that will gives you the how many it can take. 10 sprints it can take to release all of these features. So each sprint can go into 20 points. So that 20 points is going to become a velocity at an average. So when sometimes a team can take only 15 points based upon the complexity of a story, and sometimes a team can achieve 25 points, 30 points. Average has to be taken. That doesn't mean like the team which is taking lesser points mean not capable. The team which does high points means they are capable. We have to take at an average on release basis, like that. So that's the main relation between the size, velocity, and duration. So now it comes to the roles. So we mainly have a product owner role and a scrum master role and a development team role. So a day in the life of a product owner, what he usually do. So most of the time a product owner interacts with the development team. What they see is, hey, the product owner is coming with the groomings for product backlog items to groom. Prior to backlog, what a product owner does, most of the teams doesn't have that idea. Only for product owners have that idea. So they have to do the portfolio discussions with business people and envision what is going to come out of this particular backlog item. So that way they'll buy in the funding for that, and make sure is it meeting company's economics standards, are being meeting it or not, for the cost that is got estimated for this particular business activity to automate to a software component. So they have to do these portfolio discussions, get the funding approved to implement that, and estimate the item, business item, and have this particular product backlog item get written, and have a release plan, initial release plan, when it can going to be available in the near future, or when it is going to be available to the customer. So that a high level plan has to be done before it comes to product backlog grooming session. So the product owner does all this part, including the portfolio planning, release planning, and the product planning with the business teams. They do all these things on a continuous basis for the items that comes or requests that comes from different stakeholders. So, and finally, and the next stage of the product owner is they come to with the product backlog and start the grooming session on every sprint basis. If a sprint is 2 weeks, at the last day or 1 or 2 day, they keep time for this activity on a sprint, and the development team and all will come into that meeting and groom for what needs to be done, and then it goes into the planning, and the cycle continues until it comes to a shippable releasing product. So this is a regular activity for a product owner who does on periodical basis. And when it comes to the day in the life of a scrum master, if you see this graph closely, here you would see like the allocation of time on day 1 and day 10. So in day 1, a scrum master will have most of the scrum activities. So it could be the planning, or it could be the grooming side of it on a regular basis. All those things will happen on the first day, and on the next day the coaching the team, and then assisting the product owner, and then the change becoming a change agent, all things like that. On first day and last day his activities are pretty tight, and the meanwhile what he has to do most of his time is give less time, because scrum activities are not required during the second day to the ninth day, and most of the time he should be facilitating the team to coach what needs to be what they need from him, and how can he help them in meeting the overcoming the obstacles or things like that, and then assist the product owner for needed things like setting up the meetings for the stories to be demonstrated, things like that. And most of the time it goes in impediment removal. So teams, when they are working together, it is very natural where the team gets difference of opinions, so that it's a scrum master who needs to go in and solve their problems. Solve their problems means not doing like that, not guiding, not to do this, all that stuff, but from organizational benefit point of view, and from ethics point of view, he needs to facilitate what needs to be done in terms of understanding the story or a technical expertise, the difference of opinions they have in these areas. So that's why mainly a scrum master should be a coach. What Because he has a bigger visibility than development team, and he should be a servant leader from mindset point of view, and he should process the authority so that he can facilitate what needs to be followed by the team. So he should be an impediment remover, and he should be a change agent. I have a slide to show you the do's and don'ts of a scrum master. So he should not direct the team what needs to be done, because they are self-efficient, self-enabled teams he has. He just needs to guide them what they need to perform their task rightly. And I will share this presentation so that you can read all of that. And the main reason I bought this one is it couldn't stop me to bring this text here, because this is my one favorite slide out of all, which talks about a person should be a jack of all trades and master of at least one. So it's a T-shaped professional. It applies to everybody in every field. So you should have a breadth of knowledge of all the technologies, all the functionalities that happens in an organization, and you should have a depth of expertise at least on one of your own. So you should not feel like that's not my area. So that's why I would say like you should be a T-shaped professional. So and the empathic listening is very much essential for a scrum master. So if you don't have this quality, then it is tough to win the team's confidence. So when the team comes to you, be respectful and say like acknowledge their responses, saying I see, when they are saying something, and don't stretch the conversations too lengthy, and make sure that I would like to hear about that, and so that the speaker will not feel low. And things like sometimes the team members will put themselves down and say that this is a stupid idea I would like to give, this is a very bad idea I would like to throw, things like that they say. So then it's our Scrum Master responsibility to say that it's not that bad, and bring them into a passionate mode and empower them. So these are the certain things a Scrum Master has to have: an empathetic listening and build the trust to reduce their tension and encourage the surface of all the information they are giving to you. So that way you can build their confidence, and they can reach out to you for any impediments. So all that can work. Otherwise, if you are not available for them, and they don't come to you and they just fight among themselves, so that should not happen. So you should be available for them as a servant leader, so then they should be reachable to you for everything. So coming back to the development team responsibilities from roles perspective. So the development team responsibilities are starting from the grooming onwards. They are being participated. So they have to plan their sprints, do the grooming, and do the actual development of it, and ship the product. And finally, either a tester or a developer can demonstrate what they have done to the all stakeholders of the project. So that's the main thing. And one important thing here is a developer should not have a musketeer attitude, saying that all Scrum teams are in the same boat, and one team is sinking down. He should not feel like I'm glad the leak is not at our end. You have to feel that we are all on the same boat, and you got to make sure whatever the help you can do to the team in order to lift them from that problem. So he should not have that kind of attitude while working in sprints, and he should not have. He should grow himself as he should grow himself as a T-shaped skills, and he should self-organize. So come if the office is at 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, then come yourself on time and leave on time, and then make sure you are productive at least 6 hours or 8 hours or 7 hours, and make sure the organization is benefiting out of you. That way the self-organization skills will come in, and the cross functionality diverse and sufficient. So talk to other teams and see what features have been coming up, and what are the next stories is going to come in, and what are those functionalities, how we can implement, think of those solutions. So development team should think in that perspective rather than waiting for sprint planning or grooming to see what comes to us. So yeah, if at all you don't think of the complex problems that goes to other team, one day it comes to you. So you can't dig everything on that spot. So you got to see and keep your eyes and ears open and see what's going on across all the teams who are in this Scrum process. So that way the same problem can come to you. So since there is a lacking of the teams collaboration, that's why we have a Scrum of Scrums. So on a periodical basis, on a monthly or a bi-weekly once, all Scrums teams has to meet in order to collaborate what components can be reused, what they have done. This is a pluggable component that we have developed here, so that it will be easy for you to do. So things like that, the discussions will come in. So the Scrum of Scrums would be can be initiated and arranged by Scrum Master. So on a periodical, usually it is once in 2 weeks, or sometimes it will be on once in a month also. So and then after development team, Scrum Master, and the product owner, the other role we have is a program manager or a project manager. So he is a coordinator across all the different Scrum teams. So he would be facilitating the resources. He would be making sure the interviewing process and people going out and coming in. So he would be making sure to hire new people or getting the funding or all the logistical activities. He would be focusing on them and making sure the team progress goes smoothly. So the project manager will be owning at a high level on these things. And the next thing is the planning side of it. So in the planning, in a Scrum process, the levels of planning would be: a developer has to do what he need to do on a daily basis, and a sprint planning has to be done, release planning to deliver the software products, and product planning should be there, portfolio level and strategy level. So each of this level, an economic filter has to be applied, especially at a portfolio and strategy, to see this is a doable or not doable. So the envisioning process has to be done by the product owner with the business people as part of portfolio planning. So to see it is fitting into our economic standards or not. And in the hierarchical planning, once a product is being envisioned, and it got splitted into a product backlog as set of features, and each of these features get released. This set of features can go in release 0.5, and this set go in 1.0 and next up to x.y. So each of this release can have this set of sprints which can be planned as part of backlog grooming process, and the sprint teams takes those sprints and give it for a release plan. And in the release plan, you can see like what features can go, like in the release planning activity, it will be discussed with all the stakeholders, and what are the minimum releasable features that can be sent to all the to the customers. So mainly here canary releases could come. So where I release my features and it would be released only to certain customers, or I release all of these features but I won't give access to the customers. It will be there in production but it will not be there. So these are the certain techniques they apply as part of release planning activity. So canary releases are widely used in industry, and other releases are things like blue-green deployments, so that there will not be any downtime for customers. So a graceful releases will happen. So there will not be any downtime required with the current infrastructure in cloud and all we have. So that's part of release planning activity. And the next thing is the sprinting process. So as we discussed before, the sprint planning activity is mainly the input for that is a product backlog. Once the product backlog is being there, and there will be continuously the sprint backlog will get improvised, and the product backlog items will be taken and identify the goals and acquire the confidence from the teams to implement it or not, and get their commitment, and then start with the scrum team, and then take it to the sprint backlog so that teams can take it to execute. So when it goes to the execution side of it, so they will be sizing them and then go with the daily sprints and give the shippable products. So that planning and daily scrums and the task performance and communications flow management, this is all a cycle of activity. So when it comes to the team capacity in a sprint, how he needs to plan the total sprint. If it is a 2 weeks of sprint, how a team has to be. This is a very important thing for a scrum master to see. And starting from beginning, day one onwards, what are the sprint activities, planning, review, retrospective, backlog grooming, allocate some time for those meetings, and allocate some time for the support activity and maintenance works that comes from previous sprint deliverables, and consider the personal time off of the team members. And in a 2 week sprint of 10 days, if the team is taking for 4 days or 5 days off, plan that in beginning itself, so that there will not be any surprises in review meetings also. And see what is the capacity to work on product backlog items during the sprint. So development part is one side of it, and also see backlog items as well, so they need to work, and keep some buffer at the end. Don't tie up all the activities from first day to 10th day, everything. So keep some buffer so that for some certain unknown things you can capture. So the capacity has to be planned with these things. And most of the time they will be having a task board on the walls or in the screen, where they will be having all the product backlog items are sticked in the wall with stickies, and have the task of each particular feature. They stick like this is the item, and when the sprint is getting progressed, these are the items currently we are working, and these are completed. So when I get into the wall or get into the dashboard in any product or tool, I get a snapshot view of everything what's been happening. And make sure that during the sprint process, it should not be a mini waterfall. That's a bad idea. Like in the grooming side, you have to design your solution. When you are planning, you should know what technical capabilities are required. The moment you go into the execution, that time if you start doing analysis, design, and coding and testing and all that stuff during the execution time, then that's a failure model in sprint. You should not do that. So that's to be taken care as part of sprinting process. And finally, the two activities as we discussed before is review activity and retrospective activity. And in the review activity, all internal external stakeholders along with Scrum and development teams will participate, and you got to demonstrate what you did in that 2 week sprint, and get a consensus from all the team members. And the retrospective activity, you should make sure what worked well in the sprint, so that we can continue to do the same in the next sprint, and what didn't work, so that we should stop doing that, and what are the areas to improve, and what are the action items, so that next retrospective we should make sure that is not going to happen. And that's pretty much it about the Scrum process. And these are my favorite books on Scrum Master: The Essential Scrum, Agile Coaching, Coaching Agile Teams, The Great Scrum Master, Agile Retrospectives. These are the favorite books, and they are very good if you are in that line of profession. Make a look at these books. And certifications, there are so many, but these are the widely using ones. The Scrum.org is providing a series of certs from 1 to 3, and Scrum Alliance is providing these certifications. Whoever wants to get more professional in these lines, they can get into this. And that's about the Scrum. So I was left with only 13 minutes. So I'll quickly get into the DevOps essential, and finally I'll give my time to answer all the questions. So bear with me for DevOps essentials as well. So in DevOps essentials, so the main thing is the culture of DevOps needs to be understood. So when there is no, the DevOps culture is being there in olden days and all, at least 10 years before how the work development is, we got to go and build and take a lengthy hours of deployment process and all. That's not the case today. So the developers and operations is automated now. So in the process of continuous integration, deploy, monitor, and plan code, it's going to be a continuous, because since our Scrum methodology is being continuous, so the moment product backlog is being grooming, and the sprint development teams are taking the task and they are keep releasing. And if you don't have DevOps culture in at organization, then the activities cannot be delivered on time. The shippable products has to closely work with the DevOps team. So when the code is being committed, then this is a version control. Once the development teams are pushing the code, and you should have a continuous integration service like Jenkins and all, they got to build your code and do some quality gates check like testing, dynamic runtime testing or static code analysis, things like that, and then give the feedback if there is any failures in that, and then they correct it and send the code back. And this should be a continuous process. So that's why the continuous integration is being labeled there. Once the continuous integration is being through, it should go into your lifecycle environments. When I say lifecycle environments, it could be development, testing, acceptance, contingency, things like that, and then do certain pen testing if it has external interface access and all, and finally release it to your production either in canary mode or in blue-green deployments mode or things like that. So let me give you some small quick demo on that. So this is my Jenkins. What I did is I just installed a Docker Hub is where I get all softwares as images. So I just installed Docker Hub and installed the Jenkins software. So it comes with regular Jenkins with Blue Ocean. Blue Ocean is a thing like where CI/CD can be worked as a pipeline as code. So nowadays everything is in terms of coding. So infrastructure as a code or a software service as a code. So everything goes inside as a code. So in the same way, CI/CD pipeline as a code is where this Blue Ocean component that integrates with Jenkins will work. So what I did here is I have a small Java thing. So what it just does is just say hello world, and I have a test file for that, which will be verifying whether I'm delivering right message or not. And I wrote one Jenkins file. Jenkins file is a pipeline as a code. So I write all of these things where I have different stages where I would be having steps to build and steps to test and steps to deliver. It will be a lot more than this. Just to demonstrate you, I'm showing a few here. So all of these things go in as a pipeline, and then once if I go to my thing here, and I would show you how it looks like in terms of a configuration. So once you do it, if you want to build, just go in a general build triggers, advanced project options, and pipelines. So in general, you just give the name and description of what you are doing, and whenever there is a GitHub, what this option is, building triggers mean whenever I commit the code, immediately trigger the build. So it's that kind of thing. So I commit the code to my GitHub. So here it is there. So once I commit the code here, is go and pick up my code from GitHub, and from here it builds the code. But that needs webhooks to do that. So webhooks is usually the moment it keeps polling your source code, whatever you have been committing, how you do that is go to your settings in GitHub. This is open source, and here you see the webhooks. So in webhooks, you just need to add a webhook. That way you can provide all your credentials to add a webhook. So that way whenever you commit, it goes back to your Jenkins and use this particular trigger hook, and then start the job. So once that is being done, and your build will get triggered and complete the process. So just if I say build now, it runs on its own, and you see here it's been started. The blue ocean is CI/CD as a pipeline, where that shows me what's going on here, and I can see, hey, my build part is being over, and now the test is going on, now the delivery is going on, and finally it's going to get ended. So, and I could see what's going on in each of this, and see this been getting success, and finally the delivery is one where I built for this demonstration purpose to see whether it's been running fine or not. So the delivery.sh file will finally gives me the message is been successfully, the program has been successfully executed. So once I go back to my, this is the pipeline as a code which I have been developed to demonstrate this. So this is the pipeline where you see build as one stage, and test as one stage, and deliver as one stage. So this is a very basic pipeline where you could see. And if you go to your regular classic mode of your Jenkins, so where you could see what are all the different pipelines went on here. So these are the green ones which are being successful, and if there is something I want to see, I can see those logs on its behalf. So since I have enabled auto refresh, it refresh for every few seconds, and if I want to see what's went in this particular thing, I can go and see all of this success and what are the message. And the same thing holds good with error messages also. So it's a very simple tool where you can quickly install and play with it around. So now going back to our presentation, so now I would like to bring the DevSecOps. So it's a new technology, I would say instead of a technology, it's a process, new process, where you are bringing all the security into the DevOps. So how it is being sending is, once you are being planned, do some threat analysis, forecasting kind of thing, and do a secure code review before committing. And once it has been checked in, the build will get auto triggered. And first immediate thing it has to do a static application secure testing. So they used to call SAST. This is the buzzword of I given all the expanded buzzwords here that is being used in DevSecOps. So it could be SAST or software composition analysis. The tools like HP45 will do the static application security testing. And what it does is it goes into your application code, see the OWASP, Open Web Application Security Project. Every year they release top 10 security threats, and it will go and verify is it our code is being prone for any of these security threats or not. It go and check for that. So before once your code is verified there, and there is another tool called Nexus IQ. What it does is, for the libraries or third-party open source libraries that we are using as a jar files or libraries, is there any vulnerabilities in that? So the Nexus IQ is another tool which do the software composition analysis and verify is there any vulnerabilities out there. And for those vulnerabilities, there is a CVE, National Vulnerability Database, is been actively looking for these libraries and find vulnerabilities and give you a CVE number. And that CVE number is Common Vulnerability Exposure Number, and there is a scoring system for that, CVSS, Common Vulnerability Scoring System. And it will give select this is a critical vulnerability, this is a medium max vulnerability, this is a there is a rating given from numbering perspective from 1 to 10. So the up to medium you can allow them to continue. It's a kind of quality gate, you need to set it up, and then if that crosses that quality gate of threshold, you should stop there and give it back to the team. They have to plan it and they have to come back. And there is also a dynamic application security testing, which is similar to the penetration testing, where certain runtime activities will get monitored. For example, if you have Docker images, shift left. So basically, certain systems, they cannot be tested on its own. So the images can be scanned. So not all applications are images today. So in order to get an OS, today we have to get an image of that OS. We will get a server of that image of that server. So things like that is shift left to images and scan it if dynamic testing is not possible on serverless code or static things. So that's the shift left strategy coming into the play in DevSecOps world, and the combination of dynamic application testing and infrastructure testing working together as a hybrid application security testing. We have tools like Nessus, which we'll be doing. These are the certain tools I have combined all of them together to show you at the end of this in one slide for your information that is captured. And security information and event management, the CLAM monitoring and logging, like the privileged logging for security viewing purposes and monitoring purposes. So this is being captured. So this is a cycle of activity in DevSecOps. So I just bought it these things to say like what are the triggering points and what are the quality gates in a pipeline. I just show you a small pipeline with a few steps, few stages. Ideally, a DevSecOps is combination of or composition of all these stages. So when a requirement code is being developed, do a self-code review and do the check-in and do the unit test analysis, static application security testing, and deploy to a test environment and do certain functional testing dynamically and infrastructure-wise for the newly built environment, acceptance, and push on to production. And this is a runtime testing. So Twistlock is one tool where for images scanning at runtime is being used, and there is a tool called Screen, and there are so many bunch of tools which will be doing runtime behavior analysis. So RASP is runtime application self-protection. So while application is being running, you never know, the vulnerability can come in at any point of time while application is running. So it continuously run into your system to see when the vulnerability is being started coming up, because for hackers, vulnerabilities are the inputs. So they continuously look into your national vulnerability database and see what vulnerabilities a library can come in, so that they go into the systems and find it out what libraries is using by this system and take those vulnerability and then hack the system. So that's why it is very essential to have runtime application self-protection deployed into our applications. So any of these colored quality gates are failed, it has to stop the pipeline process on that spot. And the Jenkins file is the one which I shown just now. It is using a domain specific language using Groovy. So it has steps, nodes, and stages. So I'm just giving you a heads up here so that you can deep dive into these things. So that way you can learn more from out of it. And this is a periodic table of DevOps tools. So it's all categorized from source control management, GitHub, and Subversion. All these are all source control, and database automations, all this stuff, and testing, configuration, deployment, and cloud, artificial intelligence ops, analyst. All these are all given their names as part of periodic tables of DevOps tools. So if any interview, if you go in for a DevOps engineer, they may ask you, hey, you know this tool. At least you should know and what category this falls into. So that way you don't need to be jack of all to specialize on everything, but at least you should know these tools names. Just give a glance, spend few minutes of time on these particular categories of tools, so that way you can. These guys, XBR Labs has done a good job. You can go into their site and click on these things. You can get into that site. So this is a thing. And finally, DevOps or DevSecOps are not difficult. They are great and easy. Just make use of it and just install it so quickly. A recommended set of plugins will get installed automatically. Create your admin user, and then your Jenkins is ready to do all your pipeline as a code or anything of that sort. So with that, I'm done with my part. I know it's a little fast and stretched. I'm open to questions. Any questions, Mahesh? Yeah. So the prioritization of stories means a sprint have stories. There is no prioritization concept within a sprint. It has to be delivered in that 2 weeks period or 4 week period. But prioritization only comes in product backlog items where a product owner, based upon the business commitments they have, it will get prioritized at product backlog PBIs. Then only prioritization. Once the stories has been picked up for a sprint, they are all equally important, and development team is involved in that as part of sprint planning to estimate sizing of those stories using Fibonacci numbers. Yeah. Next question. Okay, so I'll be available in WhatsApp number or an email. You can mail me, so that way I can answer you in terms of any guidance or anything that is required for this. So this particular thing, Scrum process is not only for IT companies. Any product deliverable companies can take it and make use of it. So this is a widely adopted thing. So I would share these details to Prasad, so that way you can read the slides. I may be a bit faster in talking these things, so I would recommend whoever want to pursue their jobs in DevOps engineering or Scrum Master roles, go through the books that I have recommended. If time allows, do the certifications. DevOps, there is no much of certifications, but in Scrum Master they have bunch of certifications that are highly valued. But also read the books what they have been recommended, have been given in the resource section, so that you would never fail in your job. Yeah. So for a traditional data center means the data center is going to be at on-prem in the company's premises, not in the cloud or public cloud. So in order to set up that, so fill up your product backlog item. So what are the activities that needs to be performed as part of this setting up a data center? It could be infrastructure setup, or it could be the data communications, or it could be network communications, firewall setup. Each of it takes its own time. So define the list of activities that needs to happen in setting up a data center at on-prem, and from there identify the logical groupings of these activities. So when you logically group these activities, that way that should be delivered when that particular grouping has been completed. So you got to identify these groupings and then call for a grooming. So that way, how it needs to be implemented and how these particular data center activities can be completed. So that those all things from implementation perspective, it will be discussed with the corresponding technical teams who has subject matter knowledge on that area. And once the product backlog has been groomed well, and bring it to sprints. So if it has a time bounded thing, then sprinting process is good. And if it is not having a time bounded, and you don't know certain areas when it is going to happen, then go for a Kanban, which is a lean methodology, and that goes and tracking off on regular basis. and make it to a closure. So sprinting process can be taken from there and have 2 weeks or 4 weeks of sprint based upon your logical identification of the task, and then track it on a daily basis. So that way a data center can be bring it up to a closure, to a ready state. And how the demonstration is going to happen, once the data center is being there, your applications has to send all your data there. So I'm sorry. Somebody give me a second. So that's how you should get into a data center implementation using the Scrum process. So that's why I'm saying, though it is being widely used across software development, it can be used it for non-software development activities also. You have to vision out the workable product deliverable out of it. So then you can start from product backlog item, grooming to it, split it up into tasks for stories, and then track it on a daily basis. So that's why you should do it. Next question. Okay. Okay. Thank you all. Yeah. Thank you.